thanks for convening this, and thanks, Esther, for getting us started. It's always the most challenging one with such an inspiring list of ideas and initiatives you guys are doing. So I come from a different angle. I'm here as a practitioner and one of the CSOs, so not so much as a funder. And maybe just 1 minute on MUVA and why from the princess to the pauper, which it's funny if it wasn't true, but it is true. So MUVA is was built as a DFID program for female economic empowerment. For 7 years, it was funded and managed by a UK-based consultancy, OPM, to whom I work for. I designed the program. And in 2020, we decided jointly with FCDO actually to transform the program into a Southern-based non-for-profit, which we call a social incubator that has the same name, MUVA. We were lucky enough to be able to have support from DFID to do this transition and to build the systems for it, which enabled us to be here. And we haven't lost any of our intellectual capital. All of the staff that was in OPM, including myself, moved, quit OPM and moved to MUVA. So basically the same team, the same systems, and the same mission and the same work, but under a different hat, under a different house. And while before we were a little bit, I could say, like the darling under DFID's umbrella, now we're just, I guess, a common Southern CSO that no one wants to really speak to. I'm a bit exaggerating, but you can really feel the difference. And in spite of having had the privilege of having had support to build the systems, the treatment, the level of actually not top-down relationship, the quality of partnerships that we can have with the donors, including with FCDO itself, has changed 180 degrees, which has been both a surprise and a challenge. So when I was invited for this panel, I thought maybe I wanted to share 3 insights. In 5 minutes, we have to pick some of the priorities. So in terms of, in my experience, and as Charles said, I worked before for donor, I worked in the private sector for consultancy. I think it's really important to focus on results-based types of funding. There are many ways of doing this, but agreeing on the outputs, agreeing on the outcomes, being aware. I really agree with what you said, Esther, about the value beyond the project of those outputs and outcomes. It's quite important, and it's very difficult. It's very hard for donors. I often use this example, which doesn't always go down very well, is when you build a house, I mean, either you do it yourself and you buy all the bricks and all the pipes and everything, or you hire a contractor. And I often feel in a relationship with donors, they want a contractor, so they want to hire the CSO, but they want you to tell the size of the brick, the size of the house, exactly what brand and how much it should cost, and do the design, and do the price, the technicalities, but then ask you to like own it. So I mean, either you can have it one way or you can have it in the other. It's very difficult to have it in both ways. And in my experience, the different ways of doing results-based funds, in spite of having some challenges, work very well to focus. You can use a theory of change or other instruments on what you want to achieve, and then let the contractor do the job, controlling, obviously, audits and etc., to make sure that the systems necessary are in place. DFID used to do a lot of those contracts with, in my experience, quite good results. They're not there so much to say to do it anymore, but I think they have. There's a lot to learn from that experience. The second point I wanted to bring out is in terms of the requirements and the due diligences that CSOs are required to be able to respond. If you need to be able to do it. You need to be able to fund for it. And I actually have a list of the different foundations and donors and all of the different indirect costs that are allowed. And I would say, in my experience, more often than not, philanthropies end up subsidizing bilaterals, because it's unrealistic to require the amount of IT security and procurement protocols, and we have to have an Interpol database to check everybody that we give $1 to make sure that they're not terrorists. And I mean, all of this is possible, but you need resources. And northern institutions usually get around to be able to get those systems funded, while southern institutions don't. And unless donors are able to actually make this happen, it will be very hard to shift those relationships. And my last point, and maybe this is the most difficult one, because it's almost less monetary than about maybe attitudes. And so the last point, for me, it's about being honest and walking the walk, not only talking the talk. And I go back to this image from the princess to the pauper, and it's about really wanting to work and invest in CSOs. When before MUVA, I used to do a lot of tenders, and I don't think there was one tender negotiation that didn't end up with that request. Can you please put less international days, more national, and make the budget cheaper? And that sentence, just for me, encapsulates the lack of comprehension of the reality. So you have incredibly smart people in Mozambique and everywhere in Africa and everywhere, actually, but it is expensive. And you can get really, really good staff that can produce intellectual, conceptual work, but it doesn't cost $100 a day. And the acceptance of paying high fees for northern expertise, but not paying high fees or fair fees, I don't know if high is the right word, for southern-based fees, makes it, again, difficult to change the power balance, because you continue having all the conceptual work done in the north and the, let's say, execution implemented in the south. So we hope, we have the ambition as MUVA to be one of those institutions that will start being part of this movement, changing a little bit this power dynamics. We try.